So I want to play games that if I wait, I win. Having all your money tied up in your house and in a retirement plan is another form of poverty. I literally had to sit down with a journal and unpack that statement.
In your version, you're actually collecting cash now. That seems like a faster or shorter game.
What most people do though then is they never take that cash and buy back time. The long game is the repurchasing of time.
Guys, today I get to have Aaron Novella on the show, someone who has sold about 2,000, maybe over 2,000 homes. And he's got over 120 agents that he coaches in US and in Canada. And today we're going to be talking about several things, one of which is going to be how he got to a $2 million net worth, but still felt broke, and how he's changed that up to actually live a life of much greater freedom. We're going to talk about the short game versus the long game and a lot of other things on the show. So if you're someone that either is looking to build a net worth, or maybe you have some net worth, but you still feel like you're living a really small lifestyle, we're going to get into that today. This episode's for you. Aaron, thank you so much. Take us right into it. Give us a scene and a picture. You have $2 million in net worth. You feel broke. Why? And then tell us where you went from there.
Yeah, so I was following the kind of traditional guidance, which was kind of Dave Ramsey, pay off, your primary residence, and invest all your money into retirement accounts. And that, it works. I'm not saying that it's bad.
So when you say it works, what do you mean?
Yeah, what I mean is I think for the majority of people, they want to play short games, not long games. So the difference is that they want it immediately, right? They don't want to take the time to build a really solid foundation. So I want to play games that if I wait, I win. And the reason I want to play games that if I wait, I win is because very few people are willing to play them. I think producing favorable outcomes, I don't want to use the word success or failure because those have judgment in them, but instead producing the outcome that you ultimately wish to produce is really about doing certain things, fundamental things, over an unreasonable amount of time. So it's like volume over time. It's V over T. So I think we drastically underestimate the volume of activity that's required over an extended period of time in order to get the 1% outcome. Because everybody wants the 1% outcome, but I'd love to be able to outsource push-ups to the Philippines and I get diesel. That doesn't work. So I have to build a foundation, right? So I think having a foundation of living within your means, which is what we did, as income grew, I didn't grow lifestyle to the same proportion. And investing the difference is a very good behavior to adopt or create for yourself, right? A habit. So that habit was very helpful because I think particularly for high earners, people who are earning high income, they think that an investment is going to get them freedom when the strongest asset that they have is their income.
Basically what you're saying is, you're talking a little bit about short game and long game, and you're talking about investing. So if we talk about the good points of Dave Ramsey, it's the saving, living below your means, and investing. That's the good part. Now you're talking about that being the short game though.
Yes.
How is putting a little bit of money every month and waiting for the retirement to hit 30 years the short game?
Yeah, because I'm waiting for a time, A, that I may never get to. And B, there's no freedom in it. So I remember where I was at an event, a learning event, and I was listening to a podcast, and I heard Grant Cardone say something. He said, having all your money tied up in your house and in a retirement plan is another form of poverty. Now, when he said that, I know, that's a kind of charged statement. I'm aware it's going to get people's attention, but I really started to ponder it. Matt, I literally had to sit down with a journal and unpack that statement. What does that really mean? And as I started to look at it, because I did have a home that was free and clear at the time, I did have a meaningful kind of, amount saved for retirement. And yet I didn't feel wealthy. I still had to sell real estate in order to pay bills. I didn't have residual income that was greater than housing, transportation, food, and insurance. So once I heard that radically shifted my thinking. And I moved away from fully funding retirement accounts, which I no longer do, and instead started to aggressively put money into assets that pay me money.
In your version, which I totally agree with, by the way, we do the same thing. But in your version, you're actually collecting cash now. That seems like a faster or shorter game.
Well, I think I would propose it's the long game in the sense that ultimately, the reason is because whatever your hustle is, whether it's podcasting, selling real estate, wholesaling, like I don't care what you do, you're a chiropractor, it's just a mechanism to raise cash. What most people do though then is they never take that cash and buy back time. So the idea is the long game is the repurchasing of time, okay, right? Instead of just increasing lifestyle, it's the repurchasing of time. And people are so stuck in short games, Matt. They're so stuck in collecting cash for trading time for money. They never pick their head up long enough to think about the long game.
Yeah.
And what they do then is they put their time and energy into things that don't compound. So the problem with like, let's say trading time for money is there's no compounding component to it. It doesn't get bigger as time progresses, right? And there's a limit to the amount of time that I can, like what I can charge for my time. Even if I, like in coaching environments, if I'm on a group call, it might be worth, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 an hour, but there's still a limit to it. Whereas if I'm paying attention to the long game over a reasonable amount of time, 10, 15 years, you can pick your head up. And now you have cash flow that pays for housing, transportation, food, and insurance. And then you're financially free and independent. You could be much more bolder in the decisions that you make in your business, much more bolder in decisions you make about going after different vehicles or different opportunities.
The getting the time back is where it's all at, and our perspective, right? Because it's the freedom that you get to do what you want. It's also the freedom if you want to continue to do more in business to work on your business instead of in your business, et cetera. And so let's talk about like a little bit more of the specifics. So you had $2 million in net worth, more or less, at this point in the journey. What did you do? Did you sell your house? Right. And if you're married, how did you explain that to your wife? Like, give us the nuts and bolts.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I didn't sell any assets. What I said to myself is like, okay, that's a solid foundation. And for the stuff that I've, if you understand compounding, and I know that everything has a risk. I think people go through life, Matt, imagining that they can avoid risk. You can't. You just get to choose the risk that you want to take. So leaving your money in the bank is a risk. You don't think it is, but it is, because it's going down in value and all currencies eventually go to zero. So, but investing's risky. So I can't avoid risk. I just get to choose the risks that I want to take. And I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, I don't need to keep fully funding retirement accounts, because if I leave them alone for the next 30 years, and again, this is based on, historical data. It may plus or minus a little bit. There's bumps along the road. But let's say you get 2% in dividends and 5% in growth cumulatively over 30 years. Well, that means every 10 years it doubles. So if I leave it alone and don't touch it, that by itself will be more than enough. I no longer need to focus on that. And the reason why most people fully fund those is because they get a tax break. But it's not even that big of a tax break. Versus now, if I can invest capital into assets that pay me cash flow today, so I'm buying back time today, plus I get tax benefits, that's a more efficient use of capital. So it was more like an awareness, and I just have the good fortune where my significant other, I know sometimes people are in dynamics where like one is more perhaps money conscious than the other, or one is a saver and one's a spender. That's not the case for me and my wife. And we both have the same value, which is the thing that I value the most is freedom. There should be 3 rules around it. One is if you can't buy it twice in cash, don't buy it. You can't afford it. Number 2 is it needs to come out of cash flow, not earned income. And number 3, don't try to justify it. If it's stupid, it's stupid. You like it, you want it, you love it, you're into watches, fine, do it. But don't try to be like, it's going to help me in my business or something like that, right? So yeah, it was just that one phrase, Matt. Having all your money trapped in your house and in your retirement account is another form of poverty. Literally melted these sacred cows that were in my brain, and I began to shift to then but like dumping money into syndications, because I love having access to commercial institutional grade real estate. I just don't believe that it makes sense for me personally to spend my time on investments until my investments pay me more than my income. And for most people, that's probably for their whole life. Like until it's throwing off more money, because I see agents, they'll start make money and then they'll stop what's making them all the money to go mess with a property that pays them like $500 a month in residuals. Like, why are you doing that? Yeah. It's not a productive trade, right? So I started to aggressively put money into that asset class as a mechanism to produce cash flow on a monthly basis.
Incredible. And so I had an interview yesterday with Jack Gibson, and he lays out basically these 5 phases of wealth, which lead all the way from like you can't pay basically all of more of which are aligned with cash flow. So you can't pay your basic needs, and then you can't pay it all the way up to like you have private jets and things. And so for you, like, have you thought through at what point of cash flow where you might switch back to focusing on things that could have mass net worth acceleration?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking about now is what can I do? So I had somebody recently in my life. I have 3 different coaches in my life because I firmly believe in that. And somebody from a business perspective who's just like a few steps ahead of me, he looked at me right on a call like this, stared me right in the eyes and said, Aaron, you're going to die with a lot of money. And it was interesting because nobody had ever said that to me before. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have this like a lot of entrepreneurs have anxiety around money. They don't come from it from a place of abundance. It's more like there's a lack of, which is part of the driving force that causes them to keep going and keep going. But I remember having a conversation with my wife. She's like, how much is enough, bro? How much in the bank? Is it a 500,000? Is it a million? Like, what is it? Like, oh, what, right? So, but what he said to me, Matt, is like, if that's what's true, the game's no longer money. The game is time. And the game is impact.
Yeah. So
what I'm interested in doing now is focusing on things that are the highest leveraged activity, meaning it has the biggest multiplier effect for my time. So for every one input, I can get multiple outputs, but also that allow me to have the biggest impact, right? To impact the most amount of people. Yeah. And I think if you lay out like some kind of simple rules, like filters, because as people that are like young and ambitious and enterprising and aggressive, there's going to be no shortage of opportunities. But opportunities are not all equal. And 2 things could be true at the same time. So I need a filter with which to like say which one is worth the time. So the first one is if I can't make this is not worth the time. Because as entrepreneurs, we typically have a tendency to want like every penny on the table. It's like, oh, there's $5 there, I want to get it. Oh, there's $10 over here, I want to get it. But it's not the most productive use of time. So one is if I can't make this, whatever that is for you, 100,000, 200,000, $1 million, if I can't do it, it's not worth my time. That's going to eliminate 8 out of 10 opportunities. But then with the opportunities that are left, whether it's focusing on investments, which I can share you something that we're going to start to do, which is more leveraged way to do it, or other business ventures or whatever, is okay. Of the 2 that are left, which one will allow me to have the biggest impact? Which one is in alignment with problems that I'm interested in solving, like particular gifts that I may have? And then which one provides me with the most margin with time, money, and energy? And then you'll end up with one, which is like the whale. And when you end up with that one, I stack the thing that's my most valuable asset, which is my time. I'm just going to stack it on that one thing that has the biggest multiplier. Now, as far as like focusing on investments, something that I'm exploring now, I just bought a short-term rental. But there's somebody in my life who he's a partner with me at EXP, and he owns 50 of them here in South Florida. He manages 150 of them. So he's a world-class operator. So the only reason I'm interested in messing with it is because I have a world-class operator. Otherwise, I wouldn't screw with it. I'm not interested in taking courses and trying to figure that shit out because it's not a productive use of my time. And I don't mean that egotistically. It's just true. So because he's a world-class operator, we're starting to toy with, with friends and family, like doing a raise, and then he would run. Yeah. So doing like a syndication, but he manages it because he has that completely dialed in. Like he has, he owns the cleaning company. He's vertically integrated. Like he has the whole thing dialed in. So I can use my kind of influence or my network, and he can use his superpower, and together we can, help people. And that's just a much more leveraged thing. So now instead of me doing it all myself, I'm leveraging labor, other people's labor, but I'm also leveraging capital, which is other people's thing, and software, because he has the software for all that other, for the scheduling and things of that nature.
That's incredible. And I mean, there's so many lessons that are in there. I mean, obviously you talk about, it's not a good use of your time. For most people, there is 1, maybe 2 things that they could do at a world-class level and really, really excel at, And so if you do that and you just leverage all these other, like the who, not how concept, it creates accelerations that are just unbelievable. Because even if you could take 2 years or 5 years and become a world-class operator, is it really worth it? As opposed to going 10 times deeper in one and just finding people that have already spent the 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. And my life has changed when I stopped looking at people as competitors and started looking at them as collaborators.
Especially when they're in the same space.
Which is like, hey, yeah, so it's like, hey, this person is a world class. Like I'm just interested in partnering with world class operators, and my life over the last 3 years has changed dramatically because I have partnered with world class operators. Like, hey, you're the bomb at like these huge apartment buildings. Great, I'm just going to ride your coattails. Hey, you know how to do this really well. Great, like I'm going to partner with you. Or hey, you're really good at real estate. Like with this EXP thing, it gives us a platform where we can partner. I can open up the kimono and share with you everything that I'm doing. So, and then the other thing that came up for me, Matt, as you were speaking is, I don't know anything that provides a bigger return on capital than your own skills. Like
Yep.
people are like, oh, you're going to earn 10%, bro. You can double your income in a year with you're one relationship away from changing your family tree forever. So like people get confused with that. They want to like focus on, oh, I got to buy all this stuff. It's like, wait, you should pour into yourself way more, right? Because again, if the main thing, there's a saying that says like, how you get wealthy is by taking a lot of risk, a lot of risk with a little bit of money. But the way you stay wealthy is by taking a lot of money and taking a little bit of risk. If I could just get my skills to such a degree where I can raise, the whole reason why people have to be creative is because they don't have any cash.
This is such a great lesson. I actually really learned this like you learn, in my opinion, when you learn lessons, you learn them in phases. Like you could hear the concept then, and you could even acknowledge it, say that's true. Okay. But then you hear that concept a year later and it just hits deeper and you realize, oh, I went 20% of the way there. I didn't go 100%. I heard that concept again about a year ago when I actually saw somebody's financial statements. And this is something I've been so excited about, is being in groups where people just show their tax returns. They show their bank accounts because you get to see what's, not true, what people are just feeding you and what's real. And what I realized is like, oh my gosh, like this specialization thing, I mean, it's real. Like one guy over here goes, okay, I'm going to stay in my lane, and he makes $2 to $5 million a year. I make less, but I make, money in these other areas. But it's like he just spits off the cash to these world-class operators in the form of funds and syndications and investments. And when you look at the path of progress, he's kicking my butt.
Yeah.
And when you look at when you look at the full picture of life, right, you're also talking about a simplicity. Like when you do one thing, life can get very, very, very simple. And so I love what you're saying here. And I want to ask along that line, what is Aaron Novello's superpower?
There's a couple things that I'm particularly, that I've spent a lot of time cultivating the skill. I think one is I can learn quickly. I can synthesize information and then I can share it in easily digestible bites that makes it easier for people to kind of understand. And that's required because if you want to do something big, you have to sell others on your vision. Right? You have to be able to cast a clear vision and get them bought into it and excited about it. And that is a skill. The second is I've spent kind of a nauseating amount of time practicing the skill of persuasion, like presenting and, kind of handling objections and closing and that sort of thing. And I think that those two things are things that I'm particularly skilled at. And my whole staff now, they all understand and know that their job is just to keep me in the thing I'm good at. Because if you follow me around, like if you need something fixed around the house, I'm not your guy. Like people have a tendency, they only see me in the gift, right? But like if you follow me around other stuff, like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But in those areas, yeah, I got it dialed in, right? So it's just surrounding yourself. I think that's perhaps the third skill, is being able to truly delegate. Because I think a lot of people say that they delegate, but they really don't. They like hover over people because they need to be in control. So being able to surround myself with people that are really good at what they do so they can keep me in what I'm really good at.
Your perfect day for max productivity, what would it look like?
Yeah. So the perfect day for max productivity would be, one is like at the beginning of the day, pouring into myself a lot, because I know that as I grow more, I can give more. And if I'm going to be like a source of energy or a source of inspiration or a source of motivation, I have to be kind of I have to fill myself up. So it would include like a morning routine that includes, the gym. It includes cold plunge. It includes sauna. It includes breath work. It includes reading, and then being on a one-to-many, probably giving a presentation with like 1,000+ people in the room, because it's the most impactful thing that I can do, and recognize that I'm just an instrument. So in other words, like I'm the flute. My job is to make sure that the flute is tuned and shined up nice. So that way, when the wind comes through it, it makes music. But I'm not the wind, right? So being able to be a good kind of instrument and to show up fully, to a room of 1,000 people, give them some sort of inspiration or encouragement, or teach them a particular skill that'll serve them in the same way that it served me.
You're learning, you're cold plunging. I've done some cold plunging. So the value of that, obviously, it wakes you up. It goes through all these health benefits. So you're awake, you're alive, you're learning, you're spiritually aligned, everything's set to go. Where does the day take you from there?
Yeah, so currently where the day takes me from there to is a group call with some of our partners with EXP. That's 121 agents and growing in 10 months. And that's me pouring out and sharing. Like today, I was teaching them how to talk to probates. When we were doing 200 deals a year, I would list and sell probably 50 to 60 probates a year. So it's teaching them what to say and how to say it, teaching them, how to add value to those individuals. And then it proceeds to one-on-one coaching calls with me, with individuals. And then either a podcast like this or some sort of stage, a physical stage or a digital stage.
Yeah. What does being on a physical or digital stage, I mean, we know the benefits, right? I mean, basically you connect to people, you get known, all these, but what does it do for you personally to be on a physical stage or a virtual stage?
Yeah. So are you mean like just like personally as a human, or personally from a business perspective?
As a human.
Okay. Yeah. I think it provides an opportunity to share. And what I don't know that we all recognize is that sharing feels much better than receiving, like way better. So I think that's what we're called to do. You know what I mean? Is to share, whether that's resources or time or energy or knowledge or whatever. So I think you have two choices in life. One is to be a kind of like a reservoir of knowledge, of resources, which is where it like pools up in one place. The other is to behave like a river, which is where it just flows. And I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I can say this, I know it's a generalization, it's not everybody, but it was definitely true for me. And it's definitely true for a lot of people that I witness and watch on that journey, is even though they make a lot of money, they still think poor. They're still conserving, they're still hoarding, they still have a problem letting go of capital. And to me, being on a stage, I remember in one kind of setting that I was in from a learning environment, they would tell you things like, yeah, if somebody asks you what you're doing in your market, don't tell them. Like lie because you're training the competition. And I'm like, bro, it's such like a scarce, small, like thinking. It's like, dude, there's way more than enough. Nobody's fucking taking my lunch. Like nobody's like taking money out of my pocket. Like there's way more than enough. So it just allows me to, it gives me a platform to share.
Just even the formation of mindset. Like if you want to be in a place where you, because I mean, I agree with you. I think people really get a lot more value, fulfillment, joy out of giving than receiving, sharing than learning even. And so it's like a cash flow investment strategy allows you much easier to be in an emotional place to give all the time because you're not worried about where the next dollar's coming from. You know, it's coming tomorrow, et cetera.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting because all of the, I don't know, major kind of religious traditions have something about giving. And I think we think that it's like, they're asking something from us. And I don't think that that's true. I think they want something for us. Yeah. They want us to actually feel the joy of giving in whatever capacity, whether it's money or time or energy or knowledge or resources.
Right. I mean, because when you give, it allows you to feel better. It allows you to expand. And then obviously from business principles, we've seen this from all kinds of examples. Like, I mean, in all the books that have been out, The Go-Giver and all of these books on connection that show if you have an open hand and a giving spirit, like you're going to receive a lot more as well, right? So, I mean, it's a sad world, right? If we're all closed and we all suffer for it versus all open and we all benefit from it.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that reflected, where people knock on the wrong door and like something bad happens, where it's like it's starting to get like super closed off, where I was talking to one of my partners and like he had a question and I knew where it was coming from. It was coming from like a protectionist place, wanting to draw fences around things like this is mine and this is yours. And I said, hey, listen, brother, like I understand your concern. I know where it's coming from. I'm not saying that it's not valid. I just think that your energy is being misplaced. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, instead of focusing on like how you can create the best fence to protect what's yours, instead what you should be focused on, how can I add so much fucking value? Like insane amounts of value Because if you do that, you'll win. Period. Now, will there be people who you get to the finish line and they decide to do something else? Of course. That's natural. You can't really defend against that. You know how many times I got a seller right up to selling and then like their neighbor bought it from them or something? You know, like that's going to happen. At the same time, though, if you just maniacally focus on adding way more value than anybody else, you will win, period.
Well, and you're obviously a study of persuasion and speaking. And so I'm sure you probably read Robert Cialdini's books. And I think one of the things that I've learned along the way is really it's giving way more than what you get, but also setting expectations. One of the things he says, I can't remember if it's in Persuasion or in Influence, but he basically says, like, when you do something for somebody and they say they're thankful and they say they can never repay you, don't say no problem. Say, like, I know you would do the same thing for me if you were in the situation, right? So set the frame of like, yes, I'm doing this for you, but you know, and I think that's huge. If people give way more than they charge or way more than, you know, is expected, but then don't let the other person off the hook, so to speak, and say, hey, like, I know that you will pay this forward. I know if they're not looking to have it back, or I know, you know, you'll pay me what you think is right, or whatever the case is, then you can let the law of reciprocity go to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's accurate. And I think it was another book, by Adam Grant, where he's talking about like how they did this study, because I think culturally in our society, we have this kind of meme, which is like givers are taken advantage of.
Yep.
So like, don't do it.
Yep.
Otherwise you're
kind boys don't get the girls, right?
Yeah. So what I'm aware of is when he did that study, because they studied like people's trajectory in a corporate setting in terms of advancement. And there was some truth to that.
Oh yeah. Disagreeable people advance more. Yeah.
Well, people who give a lot, they disproportionately, would end up at the bottom, but they would also end up at the top. And in the middle were the takers. So people eventually like realized like, oh, this person's just taking. So again, it was cool because as I was saying this to you, I saw your face. You're like, what? And that was my experience, which was like, well, what's the difference? And what he says in the book is the difference is because the ones who end up the top, they set boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? They set boundaries around it. So and they're very selective and intentional and like kind of purposeful with who they choose to kind of pour in to.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I think that's accurate.
It seems very accurate to me. So you have the givers that never set proper boundaries or frames around their giving. Then you have the takers, which do better than the givers with no expectations. But then obviously the people who give with some good communication. Yeah, that seems spot on. And it's been my experience too, because I've tried different business models that some are predicated on 100% giving. Others are very like, here's the price, mentality. And even my own experience has led itself to those things with the businesses that we formed. Since I don't know about you. I don't know if you've been that way. But I've like, as you evolve, you try this idea, and like, it's almost like the pendulum swings, until you try and find like, what's the optimal state of being.
Yeah. So I think for me at the beginning, it was, cause that's what I was being taught to do, was to like lead with authority, like I know and you don't sort of thing.
Yeah.
And to be, with language patterns, like a little bit more kind of confrontational. And what I learned through, again, like 4,000 listing appointments and 10,000 plus hours of prospecting, I would role play twice a day, 6 days a week. I would record myself doing presentations. I would hand write out the listing presentation, right? But what I learned is that there's another way to do it where I can still be like a ninja salesperson and come from a place of contribution.
100%. What is your vision for the next 12 to 18 months for your life and business?
Yeah, so I'm 12 months into a 36-month plan. So what I've learned to do is like, it's like a 3-year vision, a 1-year plan, and a 90-day focus. Right. So the vision is that as time progresses in the coaching business, what I'm going to start to do is create more leverage there, because the way that I initially created it was the same way I did the real estate thing, which is just, like just brute pushing through and taking as many clients as you can. It doesn't matter who, as long as they can pay, they can stay, sort of thing. And I made a change in my schedule where instead of 4 calls a month, it's now 2 calls a month. Right. So that was getting back some time. The next iteration is going to be hiring coaches, and the cost for me will go up, probably double. And then there'll be other coaches. So that'll create even more time. And then with what I'm doing with EXP, with 120 agents, 121 now in 10 months, I envision that in 3 years being at 1,000, right? And me being at an EXP event, and I yell out elite, and I have 1,000 people that yells out to me builders. Yeah. Because I really view it, Matt. I really do. I view what we're doing there, and really what I'm doing just in general, as like a ministry in a way, which is like the more people that I can get proximity to. So I'm not interested in fame for my sake. It's more like the more influence I can get, the more people I can help. And it's not that I can help them with everything, because I can't, but I can help them with the things that like I really know, right? I can pour out and share with them.